What's going on, ladies and gents? This is Bento with another Steam controller playtest, and this time I'm going to be playing some Company of Heroes. A 10-year, maybe a little more than 10 years old game. It is a fun RTS that uses a lot of cover system and like capturing points and objectives. So I really liked it when I played it back in the day, so I think it'd be really cool to try for the Steam controller. So for my actual control scheme, I am using a pure keyboard and mouse setup because this is an RTS game. So for my control scheme, the right trigger is actually my left click, which you use to select units. The left trigger is my right click, so you can move them, as well as attack if you were to select an enemy unit. The left bumper is tab, so that way you can select between units you've highlighted. The right bumper is actually the attack button, so that just for convenience sake, I can just click the right bumper and select where I want them to attack. The left trackpad is actually a touch menu used for grouping, as well as scrolling up and down for camera movement. In conjunction with the A button, which is my left control, you can command units. So by holding down the A button and pressing whatever trackpad you want, you can select or command select the unit. So as you can see on the right side of the screen, the number changes based on which one I select. And if I select one, it'll select the unit. The right trackpad is actually a middle mouse region this time, so I have full selection of the screen. The left grip is actually a mode shifted mouse, so that way I can have more finer movement. I also have motion control onto that as well, so if I want to use this for more fine clicking, I guess. The right grip is the Alt button, and that's primarily used for camera moving. Although it's a little weird to use when you're using the mouse region, so you actually have to press left grip and right grip to properly orient the camera wherever you want. Left thumbstick is to move the camera, and if I were to click it, it would be to orient the camera back to the normal position. Tapping twice would do that. The face buttons are actually different commands you can use. The Y button is to retreat.
Let's go. Fall back to new positions.
The X button is to reinforce if certain members die. The B button is to hold back. And as I said before, the A button is to use for control. Select brings up the map, the tactical map. And start button is just escape. So if you need to get away from units or deselect something. So that's pretty much my control scheme, guys. Let's show you some gameplay. So for you guys who are not too familiar with Company of Heroes, the main backdrop for the game takes place during World War II. So if you may have noticed, or if you've looked at the detail right now, this actually takes place during D-Day. So I'm basically just storming the front, and then I have to take over the AA guns and basically sweep the area. Well, that's primarily what Company of Heroes is about. In terms of how I've played it again with my control scheme, it's felt really good. Actually, this is the second RTS game I've played with the Steam controller, my first being Starcraft 2. So unfortunately, I haven't had much time with RTS games, and honestly, I'm trying to look for more. I wouldn't say I'm the biggest RTS aficionado, unfortunately, but I would like to try and cater the Steam controller to orient into those games, because it's just one particular branch I haven't really spread out to. But as far as I'm concerned, it feels really good playing this game. Controlling the map feels really good with the mouse region mode. Using the joystick to move the camera feels really good. It surprisingly works almost naturally, actually, better than having to use the mouse to actually move the camera on the edges of the screen. One thing I did not really make use of too much in this video are the control groups, even though I've programmed the controller to have them. Again, just a forewarning, I'm just not really good at RTS games in general. But for those of you who are RTS aficionados, I think you might appreciate the control group functionality. The only thing I wish I could have implemented more, and you guys can always do this, but instead of using just the regular commands for the face buttons, you could always just use or program the abilities in each infantry squad. So like, for example, using grenades and using satchel charges instead of using attack commands or halting. I didn't feel comfortable implementing them just yet because I'm not too familiar with the squad commands, but I think overall this is a pretty comfortable control scheme to use, and not just for Company of Heroes itself, but for any other RTS games you guys might want to give a try. In case you guys don't know what mouse region is, it's essentially using the trackpad to emulate the entire screen. So instead of having to use a mouse cursor to swipe and follow it along with the trackpad itself is the screen, and so wherever you place your thumb, that's where your cursor will go to, so that way you can reach the entirety of the screen and you don't have to keep swiping the mouse cursor to get to wherever you want. I still like the regular mouse input. I think it definitely feels a lot finer than using the mouse region, but it definitely helps when you're trying to go from one side of the screen to the other, and especially when you're selecting units that are like the size of the screen. So if you need to make a big selection, then I think mouse region has the advantage there. Just skipping a cutscene so you guys don't get too bored with watching it. But essentially I'm just moving deeper into the hill so I can eliminate the anti-air guns and then finish the mission. One thing I actually think is a little weird with the Steam controller in emulating both left and right mouse clicks is the fact that my left click managed to stay on my right trigger. I think orientation wise it just feels awkward to look at because it is pretty much just swapping the clicks. But I guess it just feels natural for me because I am right-handed, so I end up using left clicks with my right pointer finger most of the time. The nice thing too is that if you are left-handed and if you prefer to click with your left pointer finger, then you could always just switch the triggers around. Actually, another thing you could do is if you prefer to have your right click on your right hand, then you could actually dual trigger the right trigger. So then your soft pull action might be your left click and your hard pull action might be your right click. One thing I like about Company of Heroes is that I think if you ever want to try an RTS game for the Steam controller, it might be another good starter. This I don't know if this is saying much because I'm not that big into RTS games, but it doesn't really feel, and I could be wrong in this, but it doesn't really feel that micro heavy. So it might actually be good practice just to get comfortable with using mouse region mode or any mouse mode for RTS games. Plus a few other programmable functions you might want to put in. Another thing you could do actually if you're willing to forgo using a secondary mouse function for the right trackpad, and what I mean by that is just not using mouse style of inputs, is you could actually have a second mouse region mode that's tied to the minimap. That way you can traverse the map a lot faster rather than having to use the left thumbstick constantly. So overall, I think the Steam controller has worked well for Company of Heroes. I know this is only my second time playing an RTS game, but I feel like it's really comfortable despite not using a keyboard and mouse. Granted, it's not going to be as efficient per se because there's just much more options for the keyboard and mouse, but it definitely does come close to making it more comfortable on a gamepad. If you guys want a little more practice with the Steam controller for RTS games, I think Company of Heroes is a good place to start. And for those of you who want to play Company of Heroes again, and I kind of said this for some of my older games, but the Steam controller is definitely worth revisiting if you want to. Again, it just feels really nice to get a new perspective on a game using a different control scheme. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.